Hi, thanks very much for clicking on the video link to an idle chat for the American Bar Association Section 4 Dispute Resolution. My name is Natalie, and today I get to talk to a colleague, Angela, who is at the moment sort of hiding out in New York, trying to stay away from the cold because normally she's in Houston. And so a little bit of a climate shock. How are you, Angela?
I am fine, Natalie. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Hey, thanks for being courageous enough to sign up for an idle chat with me.
Well, you got to put yourself out there, right?
It's absolutely right. All right, Angela. So we're going to let the cards dictate what we talk about today. First card. What is the most amazing physical feat you've ever managed?
I think the most amazing physical feat I ever managed that I can recall, because I'm sure I did all kinds of things when I was young and limber, but um, as an adult, I think was climbing to the top of Diamond Head on Oahu in Hawaii.
That is not a hike for the faint of heart. That's a serious hike. Good for you. Good for you. All right, Miss Angela, if you could know the truth behind every conspiracy theory, but you would die if you hinted that you knew the truth, would you still want to know?
I think the answer is yes, because I'm just too curious not to want to know. I'd
There
sure
you
be,
go.
I'd sure be spending a lot of time not talking to a lot of people.
Just
Yeah.
all right. Well, there you have it. Angela DeSilva, curious cat. Miss Angela, do you listen to podcasts?
Yes, I do.
What's your favorite?
Um, my favorite is My Favorite Murder. Have you ever heard it?
I have. That's a good one.
I really like it. I
That's
think
a
they're
good one.
very funny. I particularly like the ones that they do where they um, talk about the letters that they get from people who have either directly or indirectly had experience with some murder of one type or another. Um, the one that stands out in my mind is one woman wrote in about how her mother and her mother's sister were working at their grandmother's shop, and Ted Bundy came in, but they didn't know it was Ted Bundy. He came in and he was looking at, it was a, I guess, furniture shop or something. So he was looking at a piece of furniture and he was flirting with the two young women, and the the woman's mother was skeptical. She got bad vibes, but the her sister was kind of getting into it. So the mother was trying to keep the sister from going with Bundy. And so Bundy said he wanted to buy this piece of furniture and he would come back at the end and what time did they close. And the sister told him what time, and so the mother had closed the place early and they left, so they didn't see him. You know? But I remember that one, when people write in and tell us that those women are so great, they go, "Woo!"
That's too close for comfort.
I
I'm
think
old
so
enough.
too.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember, and I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. And so those killings were all over our local news. And
It
yeah,
was
I remember that moment in time. Next card. Miss Angela, if you were hired to show tourists what it's really like where you live, what would you show them? What would you have them do?
so we're talking about Houston, right?
This is your idle chat. You can choose Houston or New York or anywhere you want.
Well, okay, so Houston would be easier. Anyway, what would I do? I would get them in a car and have them go out with me at rush hour, because that is Houston in a nutshell. But that's what it's like to really live there. The other things I would do would be I would take them to a really great barbecue restaurant, and think I'd kind of hope that they were there during the rodeo, because that's a big part of Houston's culture, is the Houston Livestock Show and rodeo. If it wasn't that, then a sporting event is very Houston, whether it's the basketball team, the Rockets, the baseball team, the Astros, or the football team, the Texans. That's all very, very much a part of living in Houston. Um, so I know that sounds kind of touristy stuff, but I think if you were going to show somebody Houston and what it's like to be in Houston, those would be the things that I would do.
That sounds like a good trip. Plus, Houston, it seems to me, has a very disproportionate number of fabulous restaurants compared to its population.
Yes.
Yeah.
Houston has, according to the last thing I read, the highest number of restaurants per capita of any city in the US.
And so many of them are so good. Getting hungry, Miss Angela. All right. When someone asks for a recommendation for a new song or a new band, do you have a song or a band that you can recommend to them?
My problem is I like the oldies. Yeah. So, like, my favorite performers are Billy Joel, um, the Rolling Stones, I guess, the Eagles, the oldies but goodies. I'm not good with the new stuff. If I was going to recommend a new band or a new song to somebody, I would go to my son who's younger and say, "What's your favorite new artist?
Right.
Listen to it, decide if I liked it, and come
Yeah.
back and recommend it."
First, I think new is relative to the person hearing the information. Second, I'm somewhat offended by your definition of oldies. That's my music.
It's my music.
You say oldies, and I think Billie Holiday, Nat King Cole, Frank
Yeah.
Sinatra. Yeah, not my childhood. Well, I guess they are on LPs, so maybe they are old. Miss Angela, what is your favorite way to get some exercise?
Um, Pilates. I really like Pilates. I don't know what it is about it. It's really kind of weird because, you're kind of stretching yourself in all different directions, but I really like it. I started doing it. I went right before the pandemic. I went and tried it out and I really loved it. But then the pandemic came. So then, of course, then when the pandemic was over, because in Texas it was over earlier, liars. But anyway, but when it was first over, my husband was like, please don't go into some group setting. And I kept explaining to him that it was a very small studio with not a lot of people in it, and everybody was distanced. But anyway, after it had been a couple of months and it looked like things were much more under control, then I returned back and did it. I really enjoy it. Um, when I am not in Houston, I don't do it and I miss it. And I figure that means I really like it. But that's my favorite. My second favorite is walking. Walking, I think, is a great exercise, especially when you're someplace like New York City. I mean, don't walk in Houston, but in New York City, just go for a walk, okay? And look around, and there's all kinds of stuff going on, and now there are all kinds of tourists everywhere. But
Yeah,
that's my
both really good choices. Miss Angela, did you always want to be a neutral?
no. Um, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I started out wanting to be a lawyer when I was 13. And so I became a lawyer. And once I became a lawyer, I was like, well, okay, now I'm a lawyer. What am I going to do next? And I ended up working in-house in a corporation doing labor and employment law, which I really liked because I thought it was always changing. It was always evolving. There were all kinds of things going on with it. I didn't want to be like a securities lawyer or a tax lawyer, or because I thought, well, that's just reading code and reading agreements, and there's not any interesting stuff going on there. So once I became a labor and employment lawyer in-house, then the company kept growing and expanding and getting into different areas. And so I never really had to change jobs in order to do something different because the company kept changing. And so then what I was doing changed. So I did that for a long time. And then um, somewhere in there, um, because we were dealing with employment litigation matters, um, lots of courts started sending cases to mediation. So when I was still working, I took a mediator training course because I wanted to understand what their motive, how, what the mediator was, what tools the mediator was using. I thought it would make us help with the participation in mediation. And because of that, um, I ended up becoming a volunteer mediator for the Dispute Resolution Center of the Eastern Bar Association. So I was doing that even when I was still employed. Then when I retired, I continued to do the mediations as a volunteer. And a friend of mine from law school, we were having dinner one time, and he said to me, "You know, you ought to become an arbitrator. They would really like an arbitrator with your background." And I was surprised because I thought nobody's going to want to have an arbitrator whose background is purely all defense work. But what he said was, I brought to the table an understanding of the business aspects of it because of my in-house position. And that was pretty good advice. And based on that advice, I contacted AAA, and that's how it started, or how it got to where it is.
And
So
voila.
voila. So the short answer is I'm not like a lot of people who wanted to be a neutral, I think, a long time. I'm just somebody who just happened to fall into it, and I like it.
Well, and aren't we lucky that you did? I think
Well,
that's excellent. So do you arbitrate now mostly the labor law and employment cases, or is your practice a little bit more generalized than that?
well, most of my cases are employment law cases, but I'm also on the AAA consumer arbitration panel. So I've had a couple of those. And since I've been doing this, I've also gotten on the FINRA panel. So I have those. Those are not employment, those have not been employment cases. In terms of the mediations, most of my mediations are basically, there seem to be a lot of mediations about the relationship between homeowners and homeowners associations. It's very much a Houston thing, I think. I mean, I don't remember learning much about homeowners associations when I was in the New York area, but it's a big deal down in Houston anyway. So seem to
All
be a
right.
lot of those people fighting over how many stories their building should.
Right. Yes. Homeowners associations can be unique beasts. And Angela, what do you love most about the work that you do with your clients?
I like what I like most is the intellectual stimulation of it. Here's this problem. Somebody says they didn't do something, somebody else says they did do it. How do we decide whether whose story is more credible? Which way do we come out on this? How does this fit with what we're hearing? I like the whole being involved in helping resolve the issue. I think sometimes it can be frustrating. I like it.
It's very rewarding work that we do. Angela, if somebody wanted to reach out to you and learn more about you, your practice, or the resolution industry, what's a good way for them to find you?
LinkedIn is probably best.
Okay, LinkedIn, it's a powerhouse. Well, Angela, thank you so much for joining me for an idle chat. I really appreciate your time while you're up north.
Thank you, Natalie. You have a good day, okay?
Thanks, you too.